4, 3, 2, 1. Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Yep.
So I don't know how to begin the episode. I'll be honest.
There's
with
no
you.
way. There's no way to do it right.
This has not been a good week in American politics. How about that? And sometimes silence is just the best way to start. Tonight, if you haven't guessed, so we're skipping one of our episodes. We actually are already recorded for this week, but due to the nature of what has been happening with the protests, we really want to have the conversation tonight about the protests, Black Lives Matter, and kind of what's been happening this week. And well, I'll apologize if we feel a little clunky, but tonight is not about us. It's not for us. It's to have the conversations, to provide some tools that we're hoping others can utilize to be good allies and maybe correct some wrong information that is out there. So, with that being said, Keith, Chris, why don't we go ahead and get your opening thoughts on kind of what's been happening in the past week and how y'all feel?
No, let's start with Canada. Let's see. Because, I mean, the outsider's view, we were talking about this pre-show. I was just like, what does it feel like to be watching from the outside right now?
I'm actually kind of impressed that I came up with that with what I did on the fly. So maybe I'll just regurgitate it here.
I thoroughly recommend it because it's memorable.
Being in Canada and watching the States is basically like having a 24-hour live feed of the Jersey Shore, except we also have access to the Jersey Shore. And we can't turn it off because eventually it's going to make its way up here. And I mean, it already has in some senses. But yeah, y'all need to get your shit together. Like, this is, I mean, not to say that we don't either, but I've been kind of casually catching glimpses and a lot of different videos and thoughts and everything, and it's an absolute hellscape to bear witness to the fact that this has to happen in order for a conversation to be involved with the degree of racism that we've seen going on. You know, the disproportionate oppression of people of color is kind of indicative that there is a deeper seated problem. And the fact that, you know, people who look just like me have no problem saying, well, maybe they shouldn't be breaking windows, and we listen. It's like, well, no, that's why they're breaking windows, is because you didn't listen in the first place. They stood up and said, hey, there's a problem. You said, sit down, shut up. No, there isn't. So they took a knee in protest to something that you love. And you said, well, that's not the way to do it. So they said, well, we've only got violence left, so let's get out there and make our voices heard. And then, I mean, not to say that these intended as violence. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. But basically, for this degree of protest, and I mean, I don't believe that the protests came out with the intention to be this riot. I think the riots are done by the tendency towards groupthink and bad actors. I mean, in Canada, we've had a couple of riots that have happened, and really only happened because some people just wanted to watch the world burn. Some people just wanted an excuse to be assholes with a chance of not getting caught about it. But the simple fact of the matter is that it's literally going to hell in a handbasket, and all it is because some people refuse to sit down and listen to somebody saying, hey, you've got it good, we don't. The problem is with the system that allows you to have it good, but tells me that I'm not allowed to because of the color of my skin. And the fact that people won't listen to that has really fostered this horrific environment where people literally feel like they have to go out there and basically dehumanize somebody so that they can feel like they're getting hurt. And it's atrocious. It's sad. It's heartbreaking. It should never have had to happen in the first place.
Yeah, I can agree with pretty much the gist of, you know, the overall theme and point of kind of what you're thinking there. This is one of those things where I see my life and I look around and I think, boy, it's really easy to say, why don't they just go into the system and change it? Why don't they just, quietly, peacefully protest? And that's because I don't know anyone that's been killed by a cop. I don't know anyone that's been taken out of their car and, molested, either violently or otherwise. But like, I just don't know people. I haven't lived through it. I haven't had a lot of experience with it because potentially of the color of my skin, or because my parents were lower middle class, but comfortably middle class, and in a rural enough area where there wasn't an issue. And so it's really easy for me in my world to say that, I am an advocate for nonviolence and those kinds of things. But I like to think that, I could be a better person if I was subjected to those things. And I think about people in places throughout the world who watched loved ones assaulted, killed, maimed, destroyed, whatever version of pain you want to describe it. And I think what I would do. I talked to my father earlier today, and I told him, I said that, because he mentioned, that people are just burning the city down, and it's not particularly a good thing. And I said, well, I could guarantee you that if I was away at college when I was 18, 19 years old, and let's say a terrorist blew up someplace where all of my family was, like, some kind of thing where my immediate family was all just was killed or something like that. Like, I can almost guarantee you that would change the general trajectory of my life. Whether it would be, I would, seek vengeance, I would, whatever it is, like that kind of thing changes your brain, changes what you do, and changes how you live. Living near that kind of trauma regularly in a city where people that you love, people that you're friends with, just are constantly subjected to that, it changes what kind of recourse you're willing to take. And I like to think that, there's a nonviolent way out. In some cases there may be, but there may be a time, as Jefferson said, with a tree of liberty needs to be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. So, I mean, that's kind of what this feels like. I don't really know if it's going to be that big or not. I'm pessimistic to think that major change will come from this, because I think everybody is entrenched and they all know their places to go during this kind of thing. Everybody from this side and that side knows where they're going, and we all know the bylines and the headlines that'll be on Fox News and CNN. We know all of it. We've seen it before. I don't know if the change will come. I really would like to see change. And I'm hoping that maybe this bigger fireball that everything has turned into might be enough of a push. I'm suspicious that I don't know if the whole world getting behind a peaceful movement would have been better, or if it really did take something this big to start something. Whether or not that sacrifice is it's easy to have 20/20 hindsight. If the sacrifice of all this stuff that has been damaged, destroyed, and people's lives that have been changed, is that sacrifice good enough for the result? And we won't know until the results are here. That's kind of, I'm in this murky nowhere land right now. I was trying to figure out where I am and how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the message I think that we're all trying to put off here is that, like, obviously we don't want violence. We would rather a more peaceful solution. It's just,
I don't know. I know Tanner likes to say he's an anarcho.
Well, he's the wild card. He's the wild card of the show.
Yeah, and so I don't know. How are you feeling about the whole thing now, Tanner? I know you were really, really feeling some energy the other day.
We'll put it this way: I haven't slept more than 4 or 5 hours a night in probably the all week, except for on my birthday. I think I crashed on my birthday very early, and I slept 8 hours. Other than that, I just haven't been asleep. One of the things for me that hits closest to home, there was a video. They had Killer Mike, and I don't know if you all know who Killer Mike is.
Oh man, run the jewels, baby!
And he gave a speech in Georgia this week
In Atlanta.
and the highlight of that is he says, I don't believe in this type of violence. But it's these young people, they don't know anything better. And the problem is when you don't give people something better, what are you going to get? What are you going to get? And there has to be an outlet for that. And my problem is that we've watched this happen. We're standing by. We continue to allow for people like, I'm just going to even call Biden out. We allow people like Biden to be the main candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I won't tell you that, those of us on this show may have, put some extra time in, right? Compared to maybe other people. But at the exact same time, I'm not here to talk about my pain. I'm not here to talk about how I feel. I'm not here to talk about where I feel the movement or the protest should be going. I'm here to say, hey, look at these other individuals. Listen, why do we not spend more time listening? And so when we want to know how I feel, my feel is we need to shut the fuck up sometimes and listen. Because if we don't, we're just going to be back here. Ferguson was how many years ago?
I don't know.
3.
Under what president? Right? And back then we were like, oh, this is because, we have a black president. People are doing this. We don't have a black president anymore. This is not happening because of that. This is happening because of systematic racism that has not been solved, that is not continuing to be solved. And when you ask me how I feel or how I see this situation, when I sit here and go, how many times do protests turn violent? And I want to stop using the word riot, right? It's civil unrest, because rioting is what fucking sports people do when they win a fucking soccer or football game or a hockey game. Well, actually, it doesn't happen in the hockey
Win
game
or
often.
lose.
Yeah. Or rioting is when someone goes out to just like some random white guy to an African American vigil of some kind where people are trying to make a point and just starts breaking windows. That guy is a rioter. He's a piece of crap. And I'm so sick of these people who are opportunists out there. I don't know how many there are, but the ones that are out there, I cannot condemn them more. I cannot. Like, if they're bad actors or what. And I mean, there's so many conspiracy theories going around and pictures of people doing stuff, but like, that's the one thing that kills me is
is that you're right. And I think we're going to, we may touch on the conspiracy. I don't know. I don't have a set plan per se for the whole show, right? I have a bunch of links, a bunch of research I did, but I don't know how the show's going to go. But I will say this: when you fire tear gas on protesters because you don't want to do your fucking job and stand there any longer.
Yeah.
And you want to bring riot gear out because you think that's what this is going to be. You're pre-setting the line of the attitude. You are the fucking problem. It's not them. It's you. You're the fucking problem.
Did you see some of the police stations who actually the cops came out in their blues and kneeled with the protesters? They came out peacefully and they did their best to just completely disperse themselves evenly throughout the crowd. And like, I mean, there were some really great images of people like having moments. And I mean, the cities that came out in their gear, like ready for a fight, like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, that's one of the things that, like, whenever I see those armed protests or whatever, when the Second Rights Amendment guys go out, I'm always like, the cops aren't there in their full riot gear. You know what I mean? Like, the cops weren't there in their full riot gear when all the gun guys were in Lansing, when they were marching into the Capitol. They weren't all loaded up in their gun gear. But the minority protest where people are out there in their bandana masks and whatever, like those ones, the guys are bringing guns to the show. Like, it's a different setup. It's a different tone. And tone matters. It does matter. And you know, the aesthetics, the image, it's one of those things that, like, they don't treat the protesters who actually took guns into the state capitol in Michigan the same way they treat people who were out on the streets. They're just like, oh, they're gonna riot. They're definitely gonna riot and burn everything down. Well, there's like a level of fear that all the the guys with guns and if it turned into something or a skirmish or whatever, like, so what logic could you have here? And all of these minorities and all of the people who feel like they're being oppressed, they should all have guns. If that'll get the cops to sit down, no, that won't work either, because then they'll just turn into an actual war. Like, there's no way they can win. And like, if I was out there, obviously I wouldn't be carrying a weapon. I would be carrying a sign. I mean, Cleveland had some problems, but Grand Rapids really had a lot more than we did here. I mean, I have a question. I don't know how you guys feel about some of this. Like, if a protest or a riot or civil unrest, something like that happens, and they, like what they did here in Cleveland is they beat the crap out of Playhouse Square, which is basically like the play district, and it's the house for NPR. And like, if I'm going to protest and I'm going to damage particular property or something like that, I want to cause damage to the pocketbooks of the people who are doing the oppression. Wouldn't that be like kind of like your logic, or is it just like wanton?
I think the first mistake is actually trying to understand what the target was, right? I'm going to say the first mistake is us sitting here saying why, right? Which is actually what this article I have up is about. It's not because the logic in burning, I mean, it came very close to some of my friends' houses last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you what none of them did. None of them went and posted and said, why are you trying to burn my house down? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? They sat there and said, I need to evacuate. How can I get out of here? What's going on? That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll worry about the stuff later. And the problem comes back to, if we're worried about what's burning, brick and mortar, shouldn't we be a little bit more concerned about the lives? But if I were to be an anarchist, and I'm kind of an anarchist, I guess. So
yeah.
As you call me out, Keith, I am the wild card to some extent. Yes, I would probably be targeting certain things. But at the exact same time, and again, without getting conspiratorial, we have seen white people specifically doing different things. Yeah. And they may have other motives. There may be people who pick that place as an ulterior motive. I don't know. But what I do know is that, and Chris is kind of funny because Chris Rock tweeted this out. He said, think about it this way. If the police department's like, yeah, we got a couple of bad apples and this and that, then, we're going to work on fixing that. But if American Airlines told you that right now, and they're like, yeah, the majority of our pilots will get you safe. We got a couple bad apples that flew into mountains, but we'll fix it.
The American Airlines, a couple bad apples that flew in the mountains. The problem will fix itself. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah,
it'll.
It's just like, I think the problem really is not about the targets they picked, whether there was ulterior motives or other people starting it. I think the problem becomes when you start having police show up in riot gear, fully armed, fully, ready to ruckus. You have them shooting tear gas because they're like, hey, my shift ends, I'm done. And I'm presupposing, right? I am 100% presupposing.
That kind of situation is a call to arms. You stay there. Like, it's like all hands on deck. There is no end to this shift type situation. They just bring you off to like pull you back. It's kind of like when the firefighters have to go into like California, like you have a shift, so to speak, like they have to let you sleep, but essentially you're there for 12, 14, 16, 18, whatever hours that you can manage.
Yeah. And so we had a question come in, right? Somebody asked, if we think that the gross overreach of government essentially will continue and be forthright and push farther and create more civil unrest and more systematic racism. So I guess I'll start with that, right? Yes. I think this extreme government police state that we are in right now is horrible. This is bad. And this is happening at two directions, right? We have a bunch of scared middle-class people, and we have an authoritarian as a president, period. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to tell you Biden doesn't fit into authoritarian category. I won't even try and defend that. I won't. You know,
Yeah, he's
I
a
will tell you,
neoliberal at the best.
I
and
will
that's
tell
not a
you
very
Bernie
good
is
streak.
not 100%. And I
Mhm.
will tell you Elizabeth Warren, the majority of Elizabeth Warren is not.
She might be
is a little-
authoritarian economically.
Yeah. So when we talk about this and we say, is the government overreaching? And we say that, I think that the government does overreach, yes. What I would say they need to focus their time in is supporting the local communities and setting local communities up to succeed. Where do we see the best progress, right? The best progress we see is when we go into a community and say, hey, what's your biggest problem? What do you need help with? And let them take control of it. So I won't go to the point where I say government should completely remove itself. I would say that we should let the people inside of these communities start to take charge of what the funds are. And yes, I think that we have an atrocity in every state about voting. People don't go out and vote. People don't in local elections. It's even worse than in mainstream elections. And I get that.
14% in my precinct for the last vote. 14.
Exactly.
And all
14.
14% of that they were all over 55. It was nuts.
All right, so that's a little extreme, but yes,
No, dude.
the fact that and between gerrymandering and that,
Mhm.
at some point we can no longer go in and just say, hey, let's vote and fix this. That's not going to happen. That's illogical, right? What's going to happen is that if we go into these communities, ask them what they would like to do. Don't just sit here and say, hey, you can have a bunch of police because we need to make your area safer. We could say, hey, let's get you some community resources to help people who are struggling. Let's get some community resources to say, hey, there's some mental health issues that aren't being addressed. Let's get some resources to say, hey, why don't we raise the wage gap, or not raise it, but fix the wage gap in this part of the city. That's what we can do. And then we can start talking to those people and saying, hey, somebody like Killer Mike is a great, he's come from the bottom and he's raised up, right? And now he's not like a governor or anything, but he has a speaking position. He was invited specifically because of that. If we I know people in these local communities specifically that would be great candidates to run these type of organizations, 100%. And they're minorities, right? So not only do we need to take that into consideration, the government should shift their focus to saying, we're going to fix this, to going into communities and saying, how do you want us to fix this? And then if we want oversight, that's where we can set up oversight committees. And this is, Corey, probably where you and I may disagree a little bit. But the problem is if we don't give communities the resources to address their problems and help set them up to win local elections and give them that power, we're just telling people we're going to fix the problem. And as a white person who has not had to live in that neighborhood, that's a privileged position.
Yeah.
Others' thoughts? Keith, you've been quiet for a little while.
Yeah, I've kind of been going over a little bit of the social media because there's a bunch of protests that are going on in Canada as well that were escalating and just trying to make sense of things. So I got a little distracted there. But one of the things that I did come across, or I have come across here, is there's been a few really well thought out tweet threads that I've just been kind of making sure that I'm sharing. Is basically just kind of a message to people of privilege who can and should be voices for the disenfranchised and the oppressed, because really they're the ones who have the ability or have a better position to be saying something, again, because there's that pre-existing privilege. And I kind of found something that I wrote years ago and posted on Facebook when the Charlottesville protests took place and then a woman got run over. Is the one thing that I had to confront with that was the fact that there's this underlying systemic racism in society that's I'm never really going to have to deal with, but my kids aren't going to be white. when my wife and I get to having children, because my wife isn't white, and that's something that I'm never going to fully be able to understand. But that lack of understanding doesn't mean that I get to just walk away from it. It's something that if my kids come home in tears because somebody made fun of them for, say, some of the food they ate or for the color of their skin, I may not understand that, but that doesn't take away my responsibility as a parent. And that was kind of something that's always stuck with me and has kind of kept an ongoing fire and drive for, the fact that for me to acknowledge the fact that there is this systemic injustice constantly going on, and not just in North America, but that doesn't mean we get a free pass in dealing with it, and we do need to address it. And especially, again, as people of privilege, we need to be activists for those who are being oppressed and shut down and all of that. But then there's also the other hand of where we need to know how to be a better voice and how we can better assist in uplifting the position of anybody who is in this position where they're afraid of police because they don't know if they're going to say the wrong thing and end up with a knee on their neck for 7 minutes, or if they're going to end up being shot because they were holding a bag of Skittles, or if they're just going to be shot for simply jogging, type of thing. So that's there's a lot for it to unpack, and admittedly there's a lot that I still just don't fully grasp and comprehend. Oh, that's a good comment. But anyways, so it's my silence is just kind of trying to take in a lot of what I'm seeing, because again, it's growing up, I never really acknowledged a lot of that privilege. In fact, until my late teens, early 20s, I was a lot of times on the other side of the argument. So it's still really heavy and can really get to me at times. So if I do seem quiet, it's not I don't have an opinion. It's I'm trying to digest.
Well, makes sense. I mean, that's a lot of personal situations there that, like, you're probably the first person in our group here that would have to specifically deal with some of those situations. That's something that I've never had to deal with, and so I would be in the same boat as you, not particularly knowing where to go and how to do it. And so, like, those kinds of things they're real things that are going to be more and more common as race and equality and relationships grow throughout our society, and hopefully our generation becomes better and better at essentially seeing the humanity inside everyone. And I mean, that's a definite plus, and I'm hoping natural progression will happen there. There's a couple of things that we kind of touched on. So, like, the first one that I wanted to just touch on is the Killer Mike situation, and bringing Bernie Sanders. And Killer Mike was an advocate, commonly seen with Bernie and throughout his campaign. He was someone that was with Bernie throughout 2016 and was in this most recent campaign as well. I mean, the guy's a really great speaker, and his speech in Atlanta was really, really, really high quality. He's someone that you should listen to and you should follow as a great kind of lightning rod for where African American culture is currently at and how they're feeling, and where the intellectuals of the community are. Cornel West is another one. But anyways, like that entire commentary is really important, because those are the guys that, like, people like us, it's like, where are we? Who can we trust that knows what it's like? Because Tanner, you mentioned, like, where are the young people going to go, right? What do they have to do? What are they going to do? They don't know anything. So this is the only place they can go. And what do we talk about constantly whenever we're talking about people running for office is seeing someone like you running for office. You know what I mean? Like, they, even in Atlanta, and I mean, the diversity in those cities and cultures is intense. I mean, it is definitely not pearly white southern states anymore. But if you look at the representation, you look at the people making decisions, you look at the people in the positions of authority, you look at the police chiefs, there are a few, but in all reality, it's a very white male game. And that is something that the young people are like, oh, we're supposed to, this white guy is going to be the one who is going to give us the actual, time. It's this guy is going to be the guy that gives us some credit and tries to help fix these situations. Like, that's one of the things that we see is just like we were hoping that with the Obama administration, with the Obama election, that we were going to start seeing some things happen there. And what we really saw was a centrist president who made some progress when it comes to helping some people. But I mean, there was a massive support for people that were in the capitalist center. And so even when they saw a president that looked like them, they didn't get the kind of help at the bottom that they needed. And so what are we looking at when it comes to the investment in small communities and giving autonomy to small cities who feel like they don't have a say, who feel like they don't get to say much, and also the small elections, they are basically neglected. We run this country on like national news, national politics, and nobody gives a flying to the local elections. It's so annoying that nobody get like the last election that we had here. I mean, it was all mail in, so you had to get an absentee ballot. Once the absentee ballot you got, then you had to mail it in, and then they would send you the ballot. Then you would send that out, and it was so much work. And there's been a few states who have really done all mail on. And so some of those states are saying it takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years to fully have it implemented. So like there's that kind of freedom of vote, like where your voice is actually legitimately, everybody gets their equal chance to be heard. And then adding something like you get a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. You have to register to opt out of voting. Otherwise, you're just registered. They can't kick you out the rolls. You know what I mean? Like if you have a driver's license, an active driver's license, you're registered to vote. Period. End of story. And then if you are a citizen and you don't have a driver's license, you're still registered to vote. Whatever the systems are, like those are the kinds of things. The automatic registration when you turn 18. Period. If you're a citizen, that's what you are, and you have to opt out of that to give those kinds of people a chance to vote. And then the other thing, the final one for me, just like when it comes to this, like it's long term. It's what fixes this thing, and it's every dollar invested in schools it comes out the final output is anywhere from $6, $7, $8, $9 return on their investment. All of these areas, all of these places, we take money from their schools. We take money from them. We defund the heck out of it. And all of these communities are education wastelands when it comes to a couple of schools that are considered, private or special or whatever, and then everything else is completely neglected. And all of these communities missing out on that 7-8 times value. And these are the kids that are like, nobody's giving me anything. Nobody's investing in me. Nobody wants me to be anything. And that's what I mentioned when I first started out is like, if that was the only thing you knew, you know what I mean? Like if that was the only thing that you had seen, it's just basically you're considered a commodity. Go back to work. We're not going to pay you sick leave time for this. You should go back to work. You know what I mean? Like that feeling, like people they're just like, no, I'm not doing it. And then if someone decides to burn something down, that's a different story. But like, I really think that people are pushed to an edge right now. And I would love to see people do more.
And I would agree. And that's what this article is. That's what this article is talking about, right? This article is talking about, they don't condone or want to see businesses burned. I'm okay with police stations, but that's
what my first thought was. It was like, at least they're burning the police station because that's kind of the point, right? Yeah. Like if you're gonna, whatever. Continue.
Yes. I mean, yes. But
that Minneapolis police station is really bad. Apparently, like that, the descriptions of what that police station was up to, terrible.
Yep, and Antifa is threatening to release some documents. So, not Antifa. I'm sorry, Anonymous.
I was going to say,
There's no such thing as
Antifa has keyboards now. Really?
I guess they do, yeah. I guess technically anybody that identifies as an anti-fascist is now a terrorist, according to Trump. But let's not go into that because that's about us and not about everybody. That's not
Boy
about
Soros has a lot of money.
Yeah. So
he's funding it all.
This article talks about, about why people of color have been seriously disadvantaged for years and years. And you touched on it a little bit in your education, discussion, right? Your education comment is very close. But what the problem is when we sit here and look at it, people of color, specifically African Americans, have been living in burning buildings for a long time. Racism in America is not some invisible thing that appears when a protest happens or when somebody gets killed. There's been this week, I believe, 3 murders. Not just one. We've heard about one. There's been at least one other I know about in Florida where a black trans man was murdered. There you go. That's it. 2. So let's just talk 2. I mean, that's crazy, right? Peaceful individuals murdered. So when we talk about this civil unrest and we talk about what's burning and what's not, what we don't get is that everybody else, every minority has to live with this. Us as privileged white people, we don't. And yeah, I'm for a little bit of anarchy if it mixes things up. But I will not be the instigator of anarchy, nor will I be the one that participates. I'll be there to, if somebody needs to get arrested, that's fine. Arrest me, right? Because the chances are they're not going to kill me. Even if I didn't do anything, they're not going to kill me and they'll just arrest me over somebody else. And I'll do what I have to do so you can get away while it is. Unless you're a white person, then I'll let you get arrested because that was if you're taking that initiative, you shouldn't be. Yeah. And that's what this article talks about. And it's very important to understand this. The concern isn't over whether protesters are standing a few feet apart or whether a couple of t-shirts are stolen or whether they're going to have a couple of free TVs. Mm-hmm. That's not what the concern should be. The concern is whether their sons, husbands, brothers, fathers, wives, daughters, children are going to get murdered by cops for walking, for driving, for jogging. That's what this is about. And
if you're willing to throw everything away, just to throw everything away, screw it, I don't give a crap about anything. We're gonna just take anything we can get. You know what I mean? That you've been pushed to the edge where you're like, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna do anything I want. Whatever. And that takes repeated just slamming and hammering. Well, what would it? You know what I mean? If something was going on, your first instinct wouldn't be just to go take whatever, because you have a pretty good life. If I wouldn't, if there was a riot or something happening, I would huddle at home. I would keep my family close or whatever. I wouldn't be out just busting into stuff or whatever. That's a privilege that I have, a safe place and a safe home and all those kinds of things. It seems like people are concentrating on the wrong thing.
They are, and there's 2 points to be made here. The first point, right, is if you're willing to throw 99% of the protests out because some people were rioting and creating civil unrest with that. Right. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to throw that out, why the fuck aren't you willing to throw every fucking cop out because of the ones that had murdered? Because I guarantee you there's a higher percentage of cops murdering and injuring and illegally arresting people of color than there fucking is people looting during a riot. That there's no way, and I would challenge that statistic. But that's the problem I have when people say I have disgust, here. So here's point 2. I have disgust at these businesses burning. Oh my gosh, I love Sanchez so much. I can't, not have it. Good for you. You know what? Yeah, maybe it's an innocent business burning. Maybe it's an innocent thing like that burning. But what you don't understand is the fact that you're white, you're privileged, you have all these other things. You have stuff that you owe other people. And this is a different concept, right? And I don't want to get too far down a rabbit hole, but the concept of your privilege creates the fact that you owe society something, right? And I don't believe in the zero-sum game, but to some extent, we owe society because we were handed privilege, whether we chose it or not. We have it. So the difference is, how do you want to give it back? And if your giving back is to be disgusted that a business is burning because it makes you feel fucking uncomfortable because, oh, it's going to challenge your safety, how the fuck do you think these other people feel? How the fuck do you think these people feel when they're out in the street just living their life? And George, and I'll say his name, when George gets said to have a $20 counterfeit bill, fuck you. How do you fucking think he feels when somebody's on his neck? Blow it out your fucking ass. I don't give a fuck about your business. You could come burn my fucking house down too if that's what the fuck you want to do.
Oh, well, you've got insurance, so like there's a safety net.
I don't know if I have insurance for a fire or not.
I guarantee you got, in order to have a mortgage, you have to have home insurance. Right. So either way,
so I do that.
Yes. So either way, there's a safety net. You have a safety net. You have health insurance. You have home insurance. If something bad happened, you have a safety net. You're going to have a deductible. There's going to be a little bit of money. You probably have that much money. You could probably cover it. So you'll be okay. There's a ton of people, when something bad happens, they don't have insurance. They don't own their home. There's no safety net. There's nothing to catch them. They just fall off the edge. And those are the people that are like, I'm going to do whatever I want now. Society has just destroyed me. There is nothing left. I have no recourse. I literally, if I got caught and went to jail, nothing would change. Life is miserable and terrible and dangerous and horrible. In all reality, that's where it is. And so, like, I've been seeing something. This is something that I've been posting to people who've been sharing this. Is there's a couple of things out there that that people have been sharing that it's just like, congratulations, you had the opportunity with the whole world was watching you. Everyone was ready to be in solidarity, peaceful movement to change it, to start, change. We were all with you. This cop killing, and you could have all gotten together and we could have had a unanimous thing that could have started a movement to change everything. I mean, that's lovely to say, but we kind of felt that during Ferguson. We kind of felt that during,
and
the
what
last.
The fuck did they do?
And they didn't do anything. That's the thing. And so I ask all of those people. I've been asking people. I was like, so what's the name of the woman who was killed sleeping in her house the other day? What's her name? What's her boyfriend's name? The guy who's in jail now for firing off a gun for people who busted into the house and shot his girlfriend. What's her name? Do you guys know?
Not a clue.
Breonna Taylor. She was sleeping. She's an EMT.
Oh, that was her. Okay.
She was sleeping. She was in bed sleeping. Police kicked in the wrong door, filled her with bullets. Her boyfriend shot a gun at these people. He's in jail now. Like, I asked all of these people that question. Oh, really? So my point is that this one blew up. This one went viral. And that's the only reason this is happening. There was no uniform agreement. There was no uniform peace movement that was behind this murder. If this hadn't gone viral and been this big, nobody would know this guy's name. They wouldn't. They would not know this guy's name. They would chalk him up as another one. He would just be in another one. And that's what it would be. And so the fact that society has made this as big of a deal as it is, rallying cry, it's great that, this is the thing that's been so visible, but all the people saying that there's like this movement, we were ready to change it. We were ready to change it. And you burned down a Target. So now we're not gonna. Piss off. Just piss off. There's no way that you were going to change anything. It's going to take stopping the highway on your way to work. It's going to take something big to force your happy little life to change. And that's my whole point is like, I don't completely say that all of the civil unrest and all the damage is a bad thing. I really don't. It's one of those things where sometimes something needs to be sacrificed. People's lives, not so much, but businesses, and usually successful businesses like Sanchez, the one downtown in Grand Rapids, that's right across from the police station, that's burned. Just in case anyone that doesn't know that from Chris's point earlier, that place is a very successful restaurant. I guarantee you they have everything they need to rebuild that place and make it completely and totally great again. But that's not the point. It's a casualty of what some people who live in the city think of as war. And that's where I am right now. It's like I'm not gonna say I don't think some kind of serious protest and damage was unwarranted. I really think that's what it takes, is if you poke at people's pocketbooks, that might change some things. That's why that comment I had earlier is like, if I was going to go and burn something, I'm going for the guy whose pocketbook I want to destroy the most. And I don't know who, where, what, and how I would do that. But like, that's, to me, if I'm going to make the biggest change and it's going to be this kind of destruction, I'm going for a Bezos. I'm going for a Buffett. I'm going for, big guys with big money. Think, back to Fight Club. What do? They went after the pocketbooks of the world, right? Credit card companies. Like, it's got to be something like that, or you've got to have a cohesive movement of people who all do agree, like these fantasy tweets that I've been saying. Like, we really have to have a message or something that everybody's coalesced around. That I don't think that's the case here, which is why I'm pessimistic that this will do anything but put everybody into their trenches on the left and the right, and then in a couple of weeks we'll be completely beyond this again, and they'll just start rebuilding all the stuff that was damaged. I hate to think that that's the truth, but I really don't see anything beside that happening.
Well, and I think that's some of it here, right? Is we have to sit here and say, do riots matter, right? And again, does civil unrest matter? Does destruction matter? Do you burn a car? Do you turn a car over? Does it matter? Right?
Yeah.
This article talks through that, right? Because this is not the first time these have happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. America, we had the Tea Party way back before we were America, before Canada existed. Sorry,
the good old days.
And then we had the Tea Party in the recent years, where the Tea Party itself had a very focused, very cohesive message and directly affected American politics, directly infiltrated and changed the Republican Party hard. I don't think we have that cohesive of a message and a cohesive of a thing happening in the Democratic Party that could ever really coalesce into some real change.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Biden steps down, we know some work has been done. And it's not us doing the work, it's others. But here you go. This is what they talk about. Riots can lead to serious attention and change. And that's what I tell people every time I have to, and I'll be honest, I've gotten into more arguments. I stayed away from the COVID arguments for quite a while, and now I'm being sucked back in here, which is fine, because at some point, if white people don't police them, other white people, we're just, we're part of that problem. So I won't spend 100% of my day doing it, but I'm going to call people out for shitty things and shitty behavior. And
that's kind of all I do now online. I fact check people all the time.
The attention and the financial charge is exactly what is needed here. At this point, it's saying, people complained when Kaepernick kneeled, right? People complained about that. Nobody stopped white armed gun protesters from walking into Lansing. And I'll tell you what, that's some shit right there, because to be honest with you, it's kind of weird that, to me, it would seem like, where's the riot gear here? Because for Christ's sake, these dudes got fully automatic or semi-automatic. Sorry,
that's where the logic comes. Yeah, that's where the logic that I had when I mentioned it earlier. It's like, so by that logic, all of the people who've been rioting this weekend, they all should have had guns. They all should have been carrying. Then the police would have been in their normal outfits, like, hey guys, listen, we don't have any trouble. If you have something to say, go ahead and say it. Hell, we'll let you in the building. You can take pictures in front of the Senate, and they'll be down there working, and they'll be wearing bulletproof vests because they're so scared. But just take it easy, okay? Make sure you do the right thing. If that was the case, and then everybody showed up in these recent protests this weekend carrying guns, I guarantee you that wouldn't be the case. Like, I don't know if you saw the images of armed African American people walking around in the neighborhood where Ahmaud Arbery was killed, and they were just walking around, and they were like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" And guess what? Nothing. Yeah. But a giant group of people walking around. I don't know. It's frustrating to see those kinds of things, but they are treated differently.
Exactly, and that's right here. the 60s had riots. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird. We're going through the 1918 flu pandemic, and we've got riots because obviously we haven't learned our lesson from 40 years ago or 80 years ago.
What is it about all of these lessons that should have been learned decades ago now all of a sudden are happening all at once? It's almost
don't-
like those who don't learn from their history are doomed to fucking live through it again.
Am I allowed to say
We-
Trump? Is that is that a cop out answer? I kind
Oh my
feel
God.
it is.
So
Yeah.
you guys do know that
I
he's
would
now
say that-
apparently holed up in a bunker, right?
Cam David.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, they had a full riot in front of the White House. So
Wait, you
But, yeah.
consider Camp David a bunker? It's not.
I don't know.
Just so you know, it's not
It's
a
I
bunker.
close.
just keep seeing all these
It's
things about
close.
Trump being in a bunker, and I just keep going. Wait, what? So yeah, apparently he's. Sorry, this was on Forbes. Trump hid from protests in underground bunker. Report says.
under the White House. Yeah, that's not a surprise.
Yeah.
Anyways, so like the I was just gonna say the what was I've lost my train of thought now. Thanks to your bunker Trump. Oh yes, we don't teach history in the United States
Bunker
anymore.
Trump.
Yeah, you guys. What?
We don't. We
Growing up-
literally don't. Everybody says like you need to learn from history. We don't teach history here. We
Well,
teach. Each city, each school has a different history. They're all
Well,
different.
from what I was explained to is that it's not so much that Americans don't
Were you
learn history;
mansplained?
it's that they don't learn history outside of their own perspective.
Yeah.
In any way that doesn't make America look like the victor. Like America was the savior of World War II. Well, no, America was really more of the victor of the Pacific end of World War II. Hitler
If it wasn't for the Russians and Hitler deciding to attack the Russians, we would be in a very different place right now.
and all of their resources being spread so thin and all of that. It's
Who wants
yeah.
two fronts in a war?
well, yeah, you think that's what happens when you're an egomaniac or you or potentially have some sort of a problem with your brain that makes you incapable of changing your mind once you've decided something. At least there's one thing that I had heard was
Yeah, there's so many different things that it's all armchair analyses. Who knows what the
but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily the Americans that won the war.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
played their part though, and gosh darn it, they really did.
Man, Trump recently said that he has a team of people working on a COVID vaccine, and it's something bigger than even the Manhattan Project. Really?
Why are
Yeah.
are you serious? Like, come on.
That empty-headed buffoon uttered the utter horse nonsense of the COVID pandemic response team working on a vaccine is bigger and more intense and more powerful in scope than the Manhattan Project. That's a thing that a man said who's in charge of really big explosive things. It's a sad and stupid thing, but it's something that's real. And
It's like a 5-year-old.
it's because they don't teach history. Well, I don't think even if you try to teach history to him, he wouldn't care unless unless he can monetize it somehow. But like the rest of the situation is that we just don't teach history to the schools that much. Or in some places like Texas or whatever, it is an alternate history. It really is revisionist history. So like history is a thing that is essentially objective, but we don't treat it that way here. And so that's one of the reasons why we run into these situations. There will be people touting something that is the actual event or the thing that they're talking about is completely different in reality than what they're saying. Like I love people quoting Jefferson and all that kind of stuff.
COVID-19.
Oh,
Sorry.
we have another guest host.
This guy.
Anyway, so yeah, you're right. He's not a guest host. He's
That was the joke.
Moving on.
I don't know what that was.
Oh, Canada.
Oh, Canada. It's all Canada's fault.
Blame Canada.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
So, yeah, it just feels frumpy. It feels gross. It feels tough. It's one of those things that we're going to be self-analyzing for a long time. All of these situations that are happening right now. I don't know what it'll take. Like, I really would love if there was, I guess, kind of like a team of people, a group of people, maybe even a leadership committee that was in talks with the people on the ground in the streets causing this unrest to give us like a, hey, what do you want? What do you want from middle class white America? Like, what is something that we can do to finally actually make a difference? Because I don't know what kind of thing that I donate to some place. Would it be me going to a place in public? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, there's no game plan that
Mhm.
can really bring me into it without me essentially trying to insert myself into this. Like, I wanted to be asked in. I want to be told, like, this is where we want you. This is where we need help. And if anyone out there has any really great channels, any speakers or people who can give information on this kind of stuff, Killer Mike is a good example of someone who has the ear of people, and he can probably point us in a good direction. But that's the kind of thing. It's like, if you're an average person in middle class America and you want to try to help and make a difference, like a real difference, the stuff that we've been saying we don't really think is going to happen, or at least I don't think it's going to happen, because I don't know how they can mobilize the middle, and it's hard, it's tough, because I'm going to have to sacrifice something in order to make a difference. I just don't know what I need to sacrifice and how big it's going to be. Will my family be okay with it or whatever? But things need to be sacrificed from us so that we can all get together and start eating the heads of the billionaires and trillionaires.
Yeah. Eat the rich. Although
Eat
the
the
problem is that there's the problem with eating the rich, though, is that there's really not enough of them to sustain people and to guarantee that, the masses will get more than, like a
Have you seen
homeopathic dosage of rich people being eaten.
Have you seen a really good charcuterie board? A couple slices can go a long way with the right cheese.
Did you not hear my homeopathic remark there?
Yeah, I heard it.
Where
I
it's
heard it while
basically-
I was sucking, and I couldn't stop. It's like trajectory and momentum. I don't know. There's one of those
Disappointed.
things.
So disappointed.
Fair enough. So
Obama.
what I want to do, let's shift a little bit real quick, because we were talking about Trump hiding in a bunker, and I'm going to say I'm going to correct that a little bit. My guess is other people told him, go down here. There is a probability you could get killed tonight. Come down here because it reduces the risk. And he's probably like, I don't have to wear a mask, right? And they're like, no, you dumbass, just get down here. Come on. There's cheeseburgers and Cheetos, down
Hamburgers,
here for you.
and we've got a TV that's got your Gorilla Channel on it all day.
We have a brand new coffee
Pizzas
machine.
with little pizzas on it instead of pepperonis.
So what I wanted to do is play a little bit, and we may have to fast forward between this because I think there's two speeches in one. But this is specifically a different president that had a similar civil unrest breakout under his term. And I don't know, can you hear it? Oh, you can.
No.
Been deeply disturbed by the images we've seen in the heartland of our country as police have clashed with people protesting. Today, I'd like us all to take a step back and think about how we're going to be moving forward. This morning, I received a thorough update on the situation from Attorney General Eric Holder, who's been following it and been in communication with his team. I've already tasked the Department of Justice and the FBI to independently investigate the death of Michael Brown, along with local officials on the ground. The Department of Justice is also consulting with local authorities about ways that they can maintain public safety without restricting the right of peaceful protest and while avoiding unnecessary escalation. I made clear to the Attorney General that we should do what is necessary to help determine exactly what happened and to see that justice is done. I also just spoke with Governor Jay Nixon of Missouri. I expressed my concern over the violent turn that events have taken on the ground and underscored that now's the time for all of us to reflect on what's happened and to find a way to come together going forward. He is going to be traveling to Ferguson. He is a good man and a fine governor, and I'm confident that working together, he's going to be able to communicate his desire to make sure that justice is done and his desire to make sure that public safety is maintained in an appropriate way. Of course, it's important to remember how this started. We lost a young man, Michael Brown, in heartbreaking and tragic circumstances. He was 18 years old. His family will never hold Michael in their arms again. And when something like this happens, the local authorities, including the police, have a responsibility to be open and transparent about how they are investigating that death and how they are protecting the people in their communities. There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights. And here in the United States of America, police should not be bullying or arresting journalists who are just trying to do their jobs and report to the American people on what they see on the ground. Put simply, we all need to hold ourselves to a high standard, particularly those of us in positions of authority. I know that emotions are raw right now in Ferguson, and there are certainly passionate differences about what has happened. There are going to be different accounts of how this tragedy occurred. There are going to be differences in terms of what needs to happen going forward. That's part of our democracy. But let's remember that we're all part of one American family. We are united in common values, and that includes belief in equality under the law, a basic respect for public order, and the right to peaceful public protest, a reverence for the dignity of every single man, woman, and child among us, and the need for accountability when it comes to our government. So now's the time for healing. Now's the time for peace and calm on the streets of Ferguson. Now is the time for an open and transparent process to see that justice is done. And I've asked that the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney on the scene continue to work with local officials to move that process forward. They will be reporting to me in the coming days about what's being done to make sure that happens.
So, okay. So
yeah.
You heard what it is,
Mhm.
right? And now I'm gonna say let's listen to Trump, right? Is that wrong?
Oh, God.
Am I not allowed to do that? I don't know if I should do that or not.
Yeah, it
Is
would
it
probably
gonna be
cater
the
to his
same-
ego.
Is it the same amount of time, or is it shorter? Please.
We'll find out.
Me.
Justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand.
President Trump urged restraint as more protests broke out around the country, including at the White House, where California Senator Kamala Harris was among the demonstrators. Earlier on Twitter, the president suggested the protesters were professionally managed and denied he was stoking more confrontation when he inquired, "Tonight, I understand, is MAGA night at the White House?"
I have no idea. I was just asking. By the way, they love African American people. They love black people. MAGA loves black people.
What?
Fetishizing is not the same
Tonight,
as
the
loving.
president wrote, "I was inside, watched every move, and couldn't have felt more safe." Then added, "Nobody came close to breaching the fence. If they had, they would have been greeted with the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons I have ever seen."
To make a reference to vicious dogs is no subtle reminder to African Americans of segregationists who let dogs out on women, children, and innocent people in the South.
It follows another racially charged tweet from the president Friday. "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." The phrase was originally coined in 1967 by a Miami police chief known for aggressive policing tactics in black communities.
I don't know where it came from, where it originated.
President Trump's Democratic rival Joe Biden has called the president's tweets incendiary, and former President Barack Obama recently broke his silence on the George Floyd case. He said in a statement, "This shouldn't be normal in 2020 America. We can and must be better." Samantha?
So
Yeah.
So hold on. There you have it. You want to see his Twitter feed? Let's look at his Twitter feed, because if we want to know what the president thinks, all we got to do is look at the place he accuses of
Oh my god.
Oh,
The
it's
latest
like it's like looking at a supernova in slow motion.
I
it
think
is.
my hot take on that whole thing is that he's like, no, free market, we're all for free market. And then when the free market is like, yeah, no, you're going to keep quiet, he goes, no, that's not what I meant by I'm in favor of the free market.
Look,
Free
Like,
market is
he
my
retweeted
market.
himself. You know that, right? Like that's he
Ah.
like I get it. Okay, but if you're the president of the United States, A, that's this A, and B, you have 81 million followers. I'm pretty sure you don't got to retweet yourself, man. I'm pretty sure you got the views and the clicks. Like you don't need to do that. But
Well,
this is-
what I see on this entire thing, just like this is just the shortest comment, is that Obama came out and did a speech. He read something that was either written by him or team wise, and there was some messaging there. It was coherent. It was smooth. It was somewhat in the middle to the point where he could try to talk to everybody involved. It was presidential. I mean, he may not be the greatest leader, but he was definitely infinitely more capable of linguistics. And I really think that if Donald Trump came out and tried to do a speech about this, even if it was written down like that, he wouldn't be able to stay on it, and it would just be a nightmare. So he doesn't do that. He doesn't come out. He doesn't have the capability to come out and actually be a leader. He tweets everything, which is one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen in my life, because you can't lead like
he
that.
he even
He's
was
bad at
retweeting
that.
QAnon bullshit. So
Well, he's even bad at the short message. Like, I don't understand how you can be so bad at short sentences and like jamming it. You can just put a whole bunch of series out and make real coherent sentences, but he doesn't do that. He crams everything into the 251 characters or whatever it is that he gets. I can't do it. I cannot do it. It's like it's
Here.
so non-presidential.
Oh, I guess it don't exist no more. But here he retweeted, he says, where are the arrests and long-term jail sentences? All right. Like that's pretty crazy, right? We are the calm before the storm. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure the storm is already happening. These people are anarchists. We're gonna call in the National Guard right now.
No,
The
I would
world
say
is
they're
watching and laughing
theocrats.
at you, Sleepy Joe. What? Why? What? Why are you criticizing somebody else? In like, what's the point
because
of
it's a
this?
distraction, it's a diversion. It keeps the attention off of you and on somebody else. That is
Hence
the
the point
that is
that I
the
said this was
smartest
a
thing
gift.
Trump ever's done. Not that I want to give him credit for it, but his ability to distract and take attention away from himself while also keeping attention on himself. I mean, as much as I cannot stand him in all of that, I can't help but acknowledge the fact that he has an incredible ability.
He's a
to
spin doctor. He's a very, very
Yeah.
efficient spin doctor.
Yeah.
This is a gift. We mentioned this when we were talking about it before
That
in
is-
the pre-show. This
that is
entire situation is a gift to him. It takes all of the responsibility of his absolutely terrible control and understanding and leadership in the COVID problem that we've been having, and all of this stuff. We reached 100,000 people have died in this country over 4 months, 5 months now.
105, but
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like that is him. That really is him, and he could not get away from it. Something like this happens, it puts everybody back in their trenches. Everyone knows their thing. He can just riff on this. He can riff on this, and then he can say that all of this NASA space station and SpaceX going up into space is totally his fault. Totally it totally should be given to him as credit. Like, give me a break. This is 10 years in the making. Like, but he's going to sit there and he's going to take credit, and the people who love him will give him credit. And Mike Pence thinks science is awesome because he's standing in front of a NASA thing. Yeah, I'm going to guess that whatever flat earthers that love him are probably not really going to be a big fan of him standing in front of a NASA thing, sending things down to space. But in the end, this is all spin doctors, and it's a gift. It is an absolute gift. And it's so frustrating because I know exactly what this is going to do. This is actually going to enthuse his base, and it's actually going to pull some people like some of my family members who've been posting that stuff earlier that I talked about, like, they burned down the Target and we were ready for change. No, and no, that's not going to happen. And like, it's a potentiality. If Trump was so bad at COVID and it failed so miserably and the economy tanked as hard as it has, that they would be like, listen, I think we really do need to think twice about this Trump guy and his business leadership that he said he was going to bring to the table. And now they're going to see, oh, minorities are burning targets. We really have to protect Target or whatever stupid thing they call Target now. Like that's what's going to happen.
I feel attacked with that remark.
I know, I do. Whatever. I don't.
Anyway.
At this point, I don't care anymore. It's just frustrating because this is going to benefit him. As bad as he's dealing with this, and as much as he's a garbage person when it comes to like any kind of support for reforming police violence, this is just going to help him. And there's no way we can like get it under control. It's out of the hat right now.
I just saw one of the funniest things that I think I've ever saw, and I just to add a little bit of a fun light to the mood, just so we're not completely in the dark here. Somebody tweeted out, they go, just how wrong do you have to be to have Amish and witches on the same side? And included are pictures of
the Amish and Wiccans,
a group of people who are dressed as witches with black veils, like they got the stereotypical pointy witch's hat, and they're all witch themed signs about good night alt-right, no hate, interrupting those who choose hate, hex white supremacy. And then there's also a picture of a group of girls who could be Amish or Mennonite or in that community anyways, and they're saying, standing against systems of oppression with a sign that also explicitly says justice for George Floyd. And I kind of can't help but think that that's pretty awesome.
We have a huge Amish community in the area in Cleveland here, and as far as I know, there have been some Amish communities coming out with signs saying that they support.
And can we just focus for the minute on the fact that they haven't really outgrown, what was it, the 1800s, 1700s, 1800s, and they understand the problems of racism. So I kind of can't help but think that maybe there are a few people who need to sit down, shut up, and learn.
Yeah. Maybe we all need to go bowling like Kingpin. But we play.
I don't know about that.
We play 12 frames. We play 12 frames around here.
So here is the statement after the grand jury essentially said we can't convict the killer of Michael Brown.
A few minutes ago, the grand jury deliberating the death of Michael Brown issued its decision. It's now come that either way was going to be subject of intense disagreement, not only in Ferguson, but across America. So I just want to say a few words suggesting how we might move forward. First and foremost, we are a nation built on the rule of law. And so we need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully. Let me repeat Michael's father's words. Hurting others or destroying property is not the answer. No matter what the grand jury decides, I do not want my son's death to be in vain. I want it to lead to incredible change, positive change, change that makes the St. Louis region better for everyone. Now, Michael Brown's parents have lost more than anyone. We should be honoring their wishes. I also appeal to the law enforcement officials in Ferguson and the region to show care and restraint in managing peaceful protests that may occur. Understand, our police officers put their lives on the line for us every single day. We've got a tough job to do to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law. As they do their jobs in the coming days, they need to work with the community, not against the community, to distinguish the handful of people who may use the grand jury's decision as an excuse for violence, distinguish them from the vast majority who just want their voices heard around legitimate issues in terms of how communities and law enforcement interact. Finally, we need to recognize that the situation in Ferguson speaks to broader challenges that we still face as a nation. The fact is, in too many parts of this country, a deep distrust exists between law enforcement and communities of color. Some of this is the result of the legacy of racial discrimination in this country. And this is tragic because nobody needs good policing more than poor communities with higher crime rates. The good news is we know there are things we can do to help. And I've instructed Attorney General Holder to work with cities across the country to help build better relations between communities and law enforcement. That means working with law enforcement officials to make sure their ranks are representative of the communities they serve. We know that makes a difference. It means working to train officials so that law enforcement conducts itself in a way that is fair to everybody. It means enlisting the community actively on what should be everybody's goal, and that is to prevent crime. And there are good people on all sides of this debate, as well as in both Republican and Democratic parties that are interested not only in lifting up best practices, because we know that there are communities who've been able to deal with this in an effective way, but also who are interested in working with this administration and local and state officials to start tackling much needed criminal justice reform.
You can tell when he goes off speech. I don't know.
So I think the point, though, right, in the of this whole thing is there's a difference between taking to Twitter and going golfing and what this individual did, right? So we could talk about, Obama's failings, and Obama will come back and tell you all sorts of things he did wrong. He will.
Yeah, no, he'll admit wrong. Like Donald Trump is incapable of saying anything he ever did was wrong. He's incapable.
Yeah, he does not have that capacity.
Nope. There's no sense of humility anywhere in anything he done. It just won't happen. He's willing to pretend he's taking hydroxychloroquine every day. That's how much he's unwilling to say that he's wrong.
He could very well take that because he has rheumatoid arthritis, and that could be it. That could be the only truth to that statement. Yeah.
So I basically what I see with a president as Obama is, he has the linguistic character of a president. He's capable of putting together full-fledged sentences. He has a basic speech pattern that can support both sides of an argument, even saying both sides of this argument are good, which was difficult to deal with, especially in the future where we are now. But in the end, what he was able to do there is kind of lessen tensions. And that's kind of the point, right? You're the leader, right? Your job is not to be one side or the other and completely picking one side. Donald Trump is picking half of this country. Probably a little bit smaller than that. I would say a bit more of a minority is outright supporting him at this on some of his messages here. But in the end, he's picking a side, and nothing in what we just heard was picking a side. It was trying to bring unity. He may not have been a very effective leader in that, but he was trying. He at least was trying. Yep. There's no trying in what we've seen from this person that we potentially call a leader right now. So
and it takes me all the way back to when you said, "Hey, I need to know what people want me to do to change." And I looked up an article. There's an article that talks about this.
Cool.
Right? It specifically calls this out because I thought, hey, I have a lot of articles tonight, but this one is more important based on your question. And it comes back to the fact that the Trump administration has taken a jaundiced view of Obama-era efforts to police the police and set in effect, move along. Nothing to see here. That's what Trump did.
Oh, he's reduced regulations on everything.
He's-
I mean, really taking the heavy-handed nature of the government away. I mean, everybody is just dump your coal ash in our water. Who cares? Like, it's really been just remove anything, and especially if it's something that Obama put forth. Like, he removed EPA regulations for water and stuff, which is like, really? But like, if it had Obama anywhere near it, it was immediately, or at least eventually, removed.
Yes. And that's what they're saying is, at this point, step the fuck up, because we need white allies to fight racism. We want you out there fighting, because America, and this, maybe I should change the title of the show. This is super important. This is very important right here. The 3 cops that watched that dude kill a black man is a metaphor for America's participation in the oppression of its fucking minority citizens.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
That's why Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from what was the letter from the jail? What jail was it? Birmingham. A letter from Birmingham jail. That letter in there is like, I'm tired. I'm tired of them. He literally says in that I'm tired of the moderates. The moderates are the problem. You guys can't pick a side. You know the right side, but you won't do anything. You sit there. You sit there and you watch. Essentially, paraphrasing obviously, but like, he from Birmingham jail. I mean, that's Martin Luther King slamming the hammer. I really, Ferguson. Anytime something like this happens, it's always the same thing. You should sit down and you should read that letter, and then you can get an idea of what it really like and what the reason is why people are this upset.
Yep.
That's my regular response, aside from getting more specific to situations, is you should just sit down and read Letter from Birmingham Jail, and that'll help you understand maybe a place that you've never been in your life.
And exactly. And
that's just me throwing things around my room. Rabble, 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 fight the power and all of that.
Yep. When we talk through answers, what people are doing, what communities are saying, here's a letter from Target where they're extending, and again,
this is from their CEO.
Yes, this is from the actual CEO talking about Target itself and what's happening. And there's 3 things to notice here. 1, they say the names of those innocent black people that were killed.
There's Breonna Taylor.
Yep, Breonna Taylor.
Taylor.
Words.
It's like the movie Tommy Boy when they have the nitrous leaking in the car. Roads.
It's the 1792 whiskey. Anyway, they talk about, they say the names of the deceased, those that were murdered in cold blood by white people.
Yep.
They talk about what they're going to do for their displaced teens. And then they thirdly, do not mention anything about worrying about their store being burned down. That is a proper response. And I don't care. Like, I get it. This is probably some whitewash bullshit where they're saying, hey, if we're allies, we're going to make more money in the future. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. But all I can tell you, though, is that this is, at least at this current evolution of time, this is the proper response to say. They're sending, because again, they're going to be sending supplies to the unrest. They're not just going to say, all right, whatever. They're going to send water, diapers, formula, whatever is needed to that community. They're going to pay their employees who worked at that store for a couple of weeks while they work through reallocating or removing them to other stores in the area. Again, we can complain 100% that they don't pay them $15 an hour or more. We can complain about that. I'm okay with that. I'm very, very okay with separating that from this. This right here is a very decent response that a lot of activists in the community have shared because it's them saying people's lives are more important than stuff. And yeah, we're going to rape you later, but at least right now, we're going to put bygones aside and say, hey, what can we do to help? There was another place in Cleveland that did the exact same thing. They said, hey, we don't care. We don't care about our store. We only care about human lives. Go on about your business. That's important. That's important to hear.
It is.
I'm not saying that fixes it. I'm not saying that's what makes the difference in society. But what I am saying 100% is when we talk about white allies and how do we come to the table, here's white allies saying, hey, you know what? Let's not make an issue out of this one thing because in the long run, we're going to try and help.
Yeah. You know who I'd like to hear a little bit more from? Democratic Party. I'd like to hear a little bit more from them. Oh, I know. But I would like to hear a little bit more from the Democratic National Convention. I would love to hear a little bit more from the DNC, the Democratic Party. I'd love to see them really doing something different here. So this is something that's been going around the internet, and this is kind of indicative of this situation. When we look at the person as the presumptive nominee in the upcoming election and the upcoming national convention, which probably won't even happen because we can't have that thing because it's, surprise, there's still a pandemic happening. But this is a post that was going around. It says, here's the thing. Most of us younger Democrats aren't really Democrats. We aren't anything. We desperately want progressive change and don't agree with old politics. We attach ourselves to the Democratic Party because out of the two parties, it's the closest to our ideals. We have tried creating third parties. It just doesn't work. This country is so two-party obsessed that we decided reforming the Democratic Party was the best thing to do. So when all of your older Democrats get mad because we won't vote for your shitty-ass candidates, understand that we aren't really Democrats. We aren't party loyalists. We are loyal to ourselves and not to our communities, not some corrupt party. This is the perspective. This is kind of the situation where you look at the people who are in the minority communities who are like, why should we do anything by the law? Why should we do anything? We don't have any representation. We are attacked and aggressively hammered by society at every turn. Why should we adhere to your rules? We're going to just take stuff. When it becomes a lawless zone, we're just going to do what we want. We're going to do whatever because there's no sense of anything. The same with the American political system is that when you look at the young people in the progressive end of things who really want something different, younger minority groups who have been U.S. citizens who have seen garbage and they think, listen, we really need to reform this. We look at the Democratic Party who loves to say they are the party of the worker and the party of the minority and the oppressed. If you really look at their track record, it doesn't really turn out that way. And we want to see the Democratic Party change. This is a great example of the Democratic Party to really come out, push hard. Their candidate should be hammering. And I mean, we've heard a couple things from Biden, but it's been quiet. And the Democratic Party itself has not been at the forefront of this. And I just, if you want to be the guys who want to catch the people who want change, this is the time to get it. And they're suspiciously quiet. And I would really, really like to see more action from them. I don't know. Bernie Sanders has had a couple of points. Warren has been talking a little bit about stuff, but it's just been quiet. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody step up in a way that I would say like, wow, now that's a leader of the Democratic Party really understanding what's going on.
Exactly. It's not happening, and
I haven't seen it.
That's a whole sad thing about this.
I mean, Bernie was on the trenches. He was in the trenches. He got arrested fighting for civil rights back in the day. I don't think he has the ability, or he's just too old to really get out there and really be part of this. And like, I don't know who we should look to, but they're not pointing to anyone that's catching my attention, and that needs to happen.
Let's shift to Canada real quick, because Keith brought a good point up. And I wanted to give a little bit of time to this. I got to at least give you a little bit of the show, right?
Well, I mean, you guys brought me on, so technically you only have to give me what you really wanted to. There were the two things that I posted in the notes. Which one did you want me to look at?
So let's go through the Toronto protests first.
Okay. So it's nothing too big. That I've got a whole lot on. Rather, sorry. It's just the Canadian extensions of the the Black Lives Matter protests that have been going on. There was recently a young woman who fell 24 stories to her death. A young, I think she was black woman. Her name was Regis Korchinski Paquette. And what happened was, to my understanding, there was a few calls placed to have the police come to the residence. One of them being from her mother over some sort of a disagreement. And I guess Regis was a little upset, and things just got a little heated. Like I said, even her mother had asked for the police to come to help offer what should have been a peaceful solution to the problem. And as things were wrapping up, she had asked to go to the bathroom. A couple of officers escorted her back into the apartment while the family was kept out. And I guess what could be heard was she had called her mom for help. And an officer came out and went to a neighbor's and asked if she was on their balcony or whatnot. So there's a little bit of ambiguity as to the facts of what specifically happened. Although they don't particularly think that she was pushed. From the sounds of things, there's an assumption that maybe she was trying to escape and just fell. Regardless, it is believed that if the police had not come in with the intent, the assumption that there was an assault going on, that there were weapons involved, that this would have had a seriously different outcome. So this just helped prop up and fuel further motivations for, extending the message that, there is a systematic injustice in terms of outcomes in dealing with the law, and that is a disproportionate overreach or death of people of color when it comes to incidents involving the police. So her name is Regis Korchinski Paquette. Let's not forget her. She is another life that didn't necessarily need to be lost when she was dealing with police. Now, I can say at least she didn't have a police officer's knee in her neck for 7 minutes, which likely led to what killed her. However, she, died while in police custody, and it was needless. This should not have happened. So, there have been protests, and her name was one of the other names that was added, as you can see if you follow the article there, regarding. Oh crap! My link got posted twice there. Regarding her untimely death.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important here, right? As we talk through these things, this is important, right? You're right. She didn't have a knee in her neck, but she did die.
Yeah, in police custody. Exactly. So while it's important to have all the facts, it's also important to acknowledge what you can see on the surface is that there were police involved, and she is no longer with us. And let's frame it in this. The conversation about abuse is just because it isn't explicit doesn't mean it's not abuse. Just because it didn't happen in a particular manner doesn't mean it didn't happen needlessly, right? So we may not have seen a girl get shot to death simply because she was black in America, but we did see a girl who died when she did not need to.
Exactly. And that's the thing here, right? Is all these deaths could be prevented, but cops don't seem to be able to do it. And so when we talk about how do we change things, how do we make things better, how do we fix this, I don't have the answers. I do know that there's a lot of minorities that have given me some links. I don't have time probably to share every single one of them, but we do have them in the description. But there is a lot of links that can help, especially if you're parenting people, right? Children. There you go. I guess is that the proper thing to call it nowadays?
Some full-grown humans still need parenting. I've seen some.
There's one. Well, it's called reparenting, and it's a therapy thing.
Yeah. So here's some very good things, and I guess I'll tell a little personal story, and I don't know if I should or not, but I'll tell a little personal story only because it hits close to home, right? My wife and I have been very upset by this. This has filled our news feeds like everybody else's. We've been having conversations. It's very hard. This is not an easy thing, which when we start seeing protests happen and civil unrest happen, it should make you uncomfortable. And it should make you say, what are we going to do? What are we going to change? How are we going to fix this, right? You know, I will tell you my anxiety is off the charts right now. Personally, I'm having a hard time sleeping. I'm having a hard time, you know, putting my phone down and coping with it. I've watched in the last 5 days, 3 to 4 nights of at least 5 hours of protests live, just watching streams. Don't read the comments though, because they're awful. Some of these streamers have awful comments, but I've been watching them because how do I make myself get up and go, what am I going to do to change this? But what happened was my wife and I were having a conversation. My youngest, who is 9 years old now, asked the question of, well, why would they do that, Dad? Why do they kill black people? Aren't police supposed to protect us? That's a hard question
we're told in
to answer.
school. It's like the noble lie they tell everyone in the United States when you're growing up in school is that if you work hard enough, you can be anything you want. You can even be president. Like,
yeah, we should really stop telling that to some people, especially if their skin is orange.
But so we had a conversation, a very difficult conversation about how there's a difference in equality. There's a difference in how black people are treated compared to white people, especially when the police are involved, and how some black people have to be a lot more cautious because of where they live, and why all black people have to constantly be very self-aware because they don't know what could happen to them at any point. And my daughter asked me, why would anybody kill somebody because they're black? And I had to sit there and look at her in the face and say, I don't know, honey. I don't have that answer. I just know that some people are shit. And I know that sometimes people who are shit get into law enforcement and you get bad cops. And I will say not all cops are bad, but I will tell you, honey, that any cops that don't want to call that out or fix that are not good cops. And you're going to benefit from white privilege because you're going to benefit from them not affecting you where they will some of your friends. Right? And that's the sad thing, because her school is diverse, in fairness. Our street is not diverse, but our school is pretty diverse. And she has a friend who is definitely black, right? You know, like it's a good friend of hers. She talks about him all the time. And I think that's where this hits home. And we got to think about the stress this puts on them. And so we have to have that conversation with them as this is what you do. So this week, I got to explain to my kids, how do you record a video, right? This is what you're going to do when you get a phone. You're going to record the video. You're going to text somebody. You're going to do this. These are the steps you have to follow, even if it's not you that feels in danger. If you feel somebody else in danger, this is what you have to do, because
to help. Yeah.
This is going to happen for the next 50, 60 years. If Trump gets in for another 4 years, I'll tell you it'll be worse.
Yeah.
And we're not going to go down the police state road. We already touched on that earlier, but we have to do something. So here is some good things, especially for white people that want to be allies. This is the conversation you have to be having with yourself, with your family, with your friends. And I will tell you, my family is very hard to have that conversation, right? Everybody in my family, because they feel they used to be Republican and now they vote centrist Democrat, that they're woke, and they're not. And having to have these conversations gives me the opportunity to say, hey, here's some good links that you can follow. So here's a good one. Identify racial justice organizations in your area. Explore the distinction between actors, allies, and accomplices. Essentially, how do we make the difference? And this is probably going to be over my daughter's head, but how do you understand the difference between somebody that's protesting versus somebody that's coming in to capitalize on the situation? Act.
It's broken down nicely. Yeah.
Yep. this is and this is where you can spend your money. How do you vocalize yourself? When do you listen and be part of the community? How do you record things? Do you have a checklist? Those type of things. This is a very important thing to be teaching children.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a great place to start. I mean, everybody should just kind of, you should go through this and you should think, well, what would happen if I really needed to be, if I was confronted with a situation like this? What would I do? Like what they teach in sports all the time is you need to essentially predict and plan for every scenario. Then when that scenario comes to you, it'll be muscle memory. You'll do it because you're ready. And essentially, that's what you kind of need to do in our society with dealing with these kinds of things. When you see police officers, when you see people being aggressive towards other people, like you need to be able to, hey, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to record you. Are you going to keep doing what you're doing? Because I'm going to put this on the internet. I'm going to send this to every single person I know. If you keep doing that horrible thing, I'm recording you doing. There's a thing that's been going around. I don't know if it's been attributed properly to Will Smith or not, but it's basically that racism hasn't increased recently. It hasn't increased. It's just being recorded. You're seeing it now. You're seeing it. It's everyone's seeing it, but it hasn't changed. It's always been this way. And so it's one of those things that, like, as time goes on, maybe the fact that it's always there increases some kind of transparency, and it puts the oppressor's stupid face on the internet. Like, you want to be this jerk? You want to be this horrible person in the New York City Central Park, and you want to say, I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to say a black man is threatening my life. Like, literally saying, if I call them and tell them this, they might kill you. You should just do exactly what I say and let me have my dog off a leash. Like, that is a thing that, like, you can't do anymore. You literally can't do that anymore because someone has a camera and it can potentially go on the internet and ruin everything. So, like, there are checks and balances in our society, and hopefully some of those things will be a good thing. But I mean, I don't know the long-term effects of anything like that. Like, we have to just kind of ride along and do the best we can.
Hooray.
So here's a bunch of different links that you can all check out. Essentially, they talk about radical incidents. They talk about supporting children of color. And that's kind of funny because my brother was adopted essentially 7 years ago. He's the same age as my daughter. And, you know, my mom texted me, and I'm sure she'll watch this and then I'll get shit for this. But, you know, she texted me and said, hey, by the way, you know, like, somebody recommended I have a conversation with Jay about it. And I said, yeah, he's not too young to have this conversation. You do understand he is black. He is definitely going to be a targeted individual. He has some anger issues sometimes. He's going to be targeted. His father was targeted. Even though his father made some mistakes, his father was 100% targeted over other people.
Yeah.
And these links right here is what's going to help people have that conversation, right? Because I think that's important. If we don't have the conversation, what are we doing? We're not doing anything then. And
well, that's the thing I'm worried about, is that a lot of people will say, like, this upsets me, and that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end. I don't think that this should happen.
Yep.
And they'll just make like this weird unhappy sound, and then they'll go on to sharing kitten videos and whatever else it is they do on the internet. You know what I mean? Like,
not that there's anything wrong with sharing kitten videos. Sometimes you need that eye bleach just to kind of refresh your visual palette to kind of remind you, and maybe, you know, it's good for your mental health.
These here are resources. I'm moving on. These here are actual resources that you can use, books you can read, podcasts you can listen to, that talk about the same things we've been talking about tonight, but probably more intelligent than that, right? You know,
or from sources of expertise. Like, we're doing the best we can from, like, our places of privilege. Like, this is the best estimate as to the proper scenario that we can concoct in our heads, but, like, someone who has lived it is always going to be more of an authority than anything that we can conjure up.
Yep. And this right here, this TED Talk is really good. This is a really good TED Talk too. I'll be honest with you, I'm not super excited that it was done by a white woman, but at the exact same time, she's an expert in her field, and she explains how to.
This
If you-
this is the like Stanford professor who like just
Yes.
Yeah, I know this lady. She is so good. She
Yes.
basically, one of my favorite things that she's ever done is when she said like, who here would want to be treated like African Americans or whatever, and like nobody raised their hands. Like that means that you know that there is systemic racism in your nation, in your country, because you know there's a difference and you didn't raise your hand. The psychology and stuff that she's talked about, dude, she is awesome.
Yes. And that's why I share that one specifically, because
Peggy
she,
McIntosh,
she was interviewed even recently saying, hey, what's going on? What do you feel like? What are you doing? And it was kind of like, do you understand white privilege right now?
Yeah.
Like, do you understand this? Like, I've been crying, I've been doing all these things, but I still don't have the same effects as other people do.
Yep.
And that's important.
This is a good resource.
That's highly important.
Yep, just pretty much it's going to come down to people and like me, like I said, what can I do? I'm going to actually have to actively try to find things that I can do. It's not people. Nobody's going to come up to me and go, okay, white guy, here's the thing you can do. It'll make everything better. Okay, bye. Like that's never going to happen. You have to take an active role in coming up with something. So having these resources, pick the thing. You don't have to pick them all. Just pick a thing and try to make a little bit of a difference. Try to do something. If you pick one thing and do a little bit, that's going to be better than nothing. And nobody's expecting you to do everything. If you're willing to try to do everything, you have the time and the money and the resources. Good. That's awesome. But in the end, we need something. Just anything from a little bit from everyone. It's like what they always talk about, that political donations, stuff like that. Just $27 average, or $17 or whatever it is that everybody likes to talk about, and it's like to tout their small minimum average donation. Like that's what it takes. It takes a little bit from everyone, and maybe we can make a difference.
Yeah. Right here, these are important too, right? These we don't have time to go through 75. Maybe we'll do a whole episode, I don't know, going through these, right? There's a lot of things though you can do. You can Google whether your police department uses body cams, right?
Dude.
Google that. You can Google what's happening in terms of around town in your city. You can Google whether your town currently employs evidence-based police de-escalation training. If they don't, you can ask these things, right? You can ask specifically your police department, hey, what is happening? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to protect people of color during onslaught by third parties, right? What are you going to do if something breaks out in our area, right? You can buy...
Yeah, if there's like an attack, like a Ferguson, what is our city's plan?
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, we're looking at a nice list. We've got a series of resources throughout our document in the resource section of this video, and any place that this gets shared. So like, dig in there, take a look, do all kinds of stuff. Try to find something. Like I said, find a few things that you can do, and try to employ those things as the things that can make a difference. If you can get out there on the front, if you can Facebook Live and say, I am here in the protest, awesome. But if that's not something you can do, find something you can. As long as you sacrifice something, a little something, and make a difference.
I think the most important thing, though, is if you're not a person of color, make sure you're listening to those who are, because theirs is the voice that needs to get out. Theirs is the voice that's been silenced for too long. Theirs is the voice that needs a chance to ring out and make that change, because for too long they've been shouted down and not given the opportunity to defend themselves or dictate their own dignity. Don't take that away. I have been given permission to take this home. And so I guess I'll use the opportunity here. There was one thing that I did come across that drove me to that point that I just made there. Ironically enough, it's from a TMZ article, where a black woman confronted two white protesters who were tagging Starbucks with BLM, Black Lives Matter. There's a video of it that goes with this article. And it just runs parallel with some of what I had seen amongst perusing social media of, various members of the Black Lives Matter protests who were literally standing together between rioters and a Target of all places, saying, no, don't go vandalize this place, don't break in, don't steal things from here, don't do that, you're making us look bad. And in this video, what you see is a black woman who walks up to them saying, no, we're going to get blamed for that. This just furthers the narrative that this is what Black Lives Matter wants, that this is what black people do, that this is how black people behave. You get to go home and sit in your nice little house of privilege while we have to deal with being blamed for what you have just done. So while it's great to want to go out and do something and be proactive, remember your privilege and how it's going to affect how others are viewed and how it's going to affect the movement that you're a part of or trying to support. The main point of the Black Lives Matter movement is that privileged people aren't listening to the voices of those who are oppressed and are doing what they think is helpful without paying attention to the unintended consequences by those who are affected by things like racism. So it's great to want to step up and help, but first and foremost, you need to sit down, shut up, and listen. And I think, I've never had this before, so I wrapped up too soon.
We need a timer. We need a timer. We need to click down. Click.
So just remember, your actions have consequences if you have privilege. Just because you don't have to face those consequences doesn't mean somebody else does. Doesn't mean that the message you're trying to support won't suffer for what you're doing. Ask how you can help.
And that's the bottom line, because Buddy the Lumberjack says so.
Boom.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good night.